Hey everyone, welcome to another Thematic List Build. For those new to this series, here's the deal. The lists are built to be 2k points of a single faction at its lowest level, meaning no soup. If it's a Blood Angels list, we can't bring another Astartes chapter like the Raven Guard to handle artillery. It's all about maximizing the core faction while keeping things as thematic as possible. Naturally, with this restriction, these aren't going to be top tier lists, but what they will be is unique, fluffy, and fun. So with that explanation out of the way, let's get into what is probably the most requested list build on my channel. This one is for the 9th Legion, the Sons of Sanguinius, the list build for the Blood Angels, which I've codenamed Archangels Descend. For starters, let's go over the faction factors for the Blood Angels. These include specific subfaction rules, units, psychic powers, stratagems, relics, and warlord traits. Subfaction rules. The chapter tactic for the Blood Angels is the Red Thirst, which allows your infantry, dreadnoughts, and bikers the ability to add 1 to wound rolls on a turn in which they charge, were charged, or performed a heroic intervention. This is the first thematic list build where we've had a truly powerful subfaction rule. The Red Thirst allows units with the ability to fight above their weight class, and if your target was already equal to or lower than the attacker's weight class, your effectiveness is still further increased. Units. Since this is a subfaction with a full-blown codex, there are a ton of unique units and stratagems, and since this is not a codex review, I'll briefly go through these sections and highlight points of interest. Commander Dante, or Commandante? Is this a pun? Jokes aside, Dante, Chapter Master of the Blood Angels, is one of the most venerable heroes in the Imperium, and he is okay. He can definitely fight, but he is a little underwhelming when compared to other honored chapter masters such as Calgar or Azrael, who by all accounts should be his lesser. Dante is the regent of Imperium Nihilus, as declared by Gilliman, but as it stands, on the tabletop he's just a good fighter, and it feels a little odd that that's all that comes across on his status sheet, considering the status of his character. Mephiston and Lamartes, on the other hand, are fantastic characters. Mephiston is arguably a better beatstick than Dante, and being a librarian, he can boost himself up with a host of powers, as well as offering psychic protection for your army. And Lamartes offers very desirable buffs to Death Company units, those being a reroll for failed charges, the ability for Death Company units to use his leadership instead of their own, and the standard Chaplain reroll all failed hits in the fight phase. A few notable mentions: Forlorn Fury, Upon Wings of Fire, and Descent of Angels are all well worth their CP, despite the fact that the cost of Upon Wings of Fire was increased. Relics. The two most popular, and probably the strongest, are the Angel's Wing and the Veritas Vitae. And the Hammer of Baal isn't a bad choice either. Warlord traits. While some of the other warlord traits are interesting, Artisan of War is far and away the best one. It's mechanically the easiest to use, and most probably has the biggest impact as well. Now let's take a broad look at the list. We'll take a quick look overall at each detachment, and I'll circle back and talk about specific implementations afterwards. Okay, so our first detachment is a battalion. Filling out our troop slot is 3 squads of 5 scouts, all with combat knives. The HQs in the detachment are a captain with jump pack, armed with, you guessed it, a Thunderhammer Storm Shield. He is our Artisan of War warlord, and possesses the relic, the Angel's Wing. We're also going to spend 1 CP pre-game on the Death Visions of Sanguinius to give him the Black Rage. And the second HQ is a lieutenant with jump pack, armed with a Thunderhammer. The second detachment is also a battalion. Leading it is Lamartes and a Primaris lieutenant, armed with a master-crafted Stalker bolt rifle. Filling out the troops is a 5-man squad of intercessors, all with bolt rifles, 1 tack squad of 5, all with bolt guns, and a second tack squad of 5, with 1 flamer because they had points to spare. Taking up an elite slot is a max-size squad of Death Company Marines, all armed with bolt guns, chainswords, and jump packs. And just in case you didn't think we had enough jump packs, we have 1 last squad of Inceptors, armed with plasma exterminators. And the last attachment is a spearhead, led by a Librarian Dreadnought. Filling out the required heavy slots are 2 Contemptor Mortis Dreadnoughts, one with 2 twin last cannons and the other with 2 twin autocannons. And last, but certainly not least, is a single Leviathan Dreadnought, armed with 2 Siege Claws, 2 Meltaguns, 2 Heavy Flamers, and 3 Hunter Killer Missiles. And here we are, the Archangels Descend. I believe it's got all the bases covered when it comes to dealing with the various types of threat that comprise competent lists. It incorporates a ton of jump pack infantry, plus a detachment of dreadnoughts, which are not only led by the unique Librarian Dreadnought, but feel thematically appropriate given the list's theme of redemption. There's great significance tied to the tragic death of Sanguinus for the Blood Angels. And since all those honored dreadnoughts also fell in battle, the Dreadnought detachment makes for a strong thematic centerpiece for the army. So now we can go through the units, and I can explain the jobs I have in mind, and the general strategy for the list. As I have said before, Scouts were the de facto troops choice in competitive games, not only as a cheaper means to fill out detachments, but also because the strong utility they provide. You should deploy your scouts outside of your deployment zone on midfield objectives, or as close as possible to enemy units, in such a way to hem them in. In the backfield. On top of giving more CP, the intercessors and tactical squads are there to hold objectives in your own deployment zone, or if need be, they can move to midfield as the game progresses. Also, all the surgeons who can take chain swords should. Those free attacks are worth far more to Blood Angels because of the Red Thirst. Supporting the backline objective holding units is the Primaris Lieutenant. He has the mastercrafted Stalker Bolt Rifle, which is pretty decent. If he manages to wound, it has good AP and does a good amount of damage at -2 and 2 respectively. His real value will be the reroll wound rolls of 1 aura he will provide to your backline fire support, and with the new Bolter Discipline beta rule, it will really help those 30-inch bolt rifles do work. Rounding out the backline are 2 Mortis Pattern Dreadnoughts. With their 2+ ballistic skill, the Lascan Dread will output 4 shots, generally geared towards high toughness targets with no invuln saves. The Autocannon Dread will output 8 shots, which are geared towards higher toughness targets too, but the greater volume will help it when it comes to actually wounding targets with invulnerable saves. The higher volume with better than average ballistic skill will allow it to perform quite well against hard to hit flyers as well. Having the Dreadnoughts with the backline fire support group offers good utility for the Wisdom of the Ancients stratagem as well, allowing you to get a reroll hit rolls of 1, creating good synergy with our Primaris Lieutenant. The next section is a little hard to parse out. Essentially, I'll cover all jump pack units here. Here's the crux of it. Upon Wings of Fire and Descent of Angels are stratagems that are among the best in the book. One lets a unit leave the board and then set up at the end of the movement phase as if they arrived from Deep Strike. The other lets you charge with a unit that was set up in the current turn with 3 dice instead of 2. Both are pivotal stratagems not only to our theme, but also making smart plays. The catch is, they are both 2 CP, and they both only work on jump pack units. This means that you need to decide during deployment what your opponent's main threats are going to be, and what you want to tackle turn 1. Since the other unit can arrive turn 2 using natural Deep Strike, so you don't need to use Upon Wings of Fire to shunt them up the board. Food for thought, but it gives you good flexibility as far as the list is concerned. And having tactical flexibility, not the stratagem because it's bad, is always good to have in a list. Death Company. The Death Company are your dedicated anti-infantry tool. In a perfect activation, they will have 30 bolt gun shots. Each Death Company Marine has 2 attacks base, plus 1 for their chainsword, plus another 1 for the Black Ray, meaning a squad of 15 Marines will be able to make 60 attacks in a single activation. And when you factor in the Red Thirst, those attacks become so much scarier, and that's not counting buffs from Lamarties or from psychic powers or stratagems. If you get first turn, I 100% feel you should spend 2 CP on Forlorn Fury, allowing these guys to move. Being a turn 0 move, you can advance them and have no impact against your ability to charge. With jump packs, they will move approximately 15 inches after advancing. On their movement activation, they'll move another 12. This already brings them to 27 inches from their initial position. Given that most deployment schemes are set up with a 24-inch gap, they are already at prime charging distance to do what they do best. Lamarties. He has 6 attacks, thanks to the Black Rage, at strength 6, AP -2, and D3 damage. If you are planning to use Forlorn Fury on your Death Company squad, it's best to keep Lamarties in Deep Strike, as the stratagem can only be used once and he'll be left behind out of range anyways. Should that be the case, he can always arrive and re-roll his own charge. And ideally, your Death Company should be positioned in a way that he can also benefit them as much as possible with his aura. Our Warlord, all decked out, he has 5 attacks, hitting on 3s rerolling 1s at strength 8 with the Red Thirst, at -3 AP and 4 damage flat thanks to his Warlord trait. As I mentioned previously, he's a strong candidate for going up the board with Upon Wings of Fire, plus the Descent of Angels strategy to try and get an opportunistic charge with 3 dice, ignoring Overwatch and rerolling fail charges. Our Lieutenant fills the same role as our Captain, but he performs a little worse. You can keep one in Deep Strike and leave one on the board, or leave both on the board. These two characters are legitimate anti-air problem solvers. Should an enemy flyer drift too close, they will easily knock them out of the sky. The Plasma Scepters are there to provide some high volume anti-armor with low damage where you need it. I would deploy them in Deep Strike, ideally arriving in turn 2 within range of the Captain's aura to help prevent self-destructs. Let's take a look at what we covered so far and the general strategy. So the list works as such. We got immediate threat saturation in place via the scouts. I know it's low threat, but they're more threatening than your average scouts, and so shouldn't be ignored. We then have backline fire support led by a Primaris Lieutenant supporting 2 Mortis Pattern Dreadnoughts, probably benefiting from Wisdom of the Ancients, so we spend 1 CP. But now the 2 Dreads and Lieutenant, and potentially some Bolt Gun and Bolt Rifle fire, are all rerolling hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. Meanwhile, we spend 2 CP on Forlorn Fury to secure the Death Company's first turn charge, and the Smash Captains upon Wings of Fire and Descent of Angels to guarantee him also a first turn charge as well. Now we have spent a total of 7 CP of the 12 afforded by the list on stratagems in the first turn, but look at what it provides. Truly a Descent of Angels. We have multiple scouts making first turn charges, bolstered by a fat squad of Death Company harassing the front lines of the enemy. And we have a Smash Captain potentially entering the rear lines taking on a high value target. A classic Hammer and Anvil setup. And this is going to be bolstered by the turn 2 drop of Lamarties, the Smash Lieutenant, and Primaris Scepters. So as it is, this list really hits hard turn 1. And while all that is going on, we have 2 Dreadnoughts sauntering up the field. For me, the Librarian Dreadnought was too iconic not to take. The 2 powers I opted for were the Wings of Sanguinius and the Quickening. The Wings of Sanguinius is only a warp charge value of 5, meaning you'll probably be able to get the power off, barring any denies. And it helps it getting into combat. Also, having a flying dreadnought destroy an enemy flyer is a hilarious concept. One I think alone makes the list worth playing. Between this and the Quickening, your untargetable flying dreadnought will be able to shuffle up the board and get where he wants to be in turn 2. And finally, our centerpiece for the army. The Leviathan Dreadnought is probably the slowest unit in the list. With a movement of 8, you'll probably get him into combat in turn 3, turn 2 if you're lucky, or if you're facing a melee-centric army, possibly earlier. But his loadout in particular will allow him to take opportunistic shots should anything be within range of his heavy flamers and meltaguns as he goes up the board. In addition, he can also fire off 3 Hunter Killer missiles as well. Anything that gets into combat with him will certainly meet its end, as this guy can easily take on Titans, as even our mighty Leviathan Dreadnought can take advantage of the Red Thirst. And lo, the Archangel's Descend list is complete. If my numbers are correct, at the time of recording this video, the list comes to 1997 points and provides 12 command points, 11 which are generated from the detachment, plus 3 for being battle-forged, but spending 2 pre-game. This is the first list build I have done post 2018's chapter proof, and I can't help but feel there is a ton here, and for a Space Marines list, it's a little bizarre to see. That brings this Thematic List Build video to a close. Let me know if you guys enjoyed it. Feedback would be greatly appreciated. Comments, likes, and subscribes are the best metric I can use to ensure I'm creating content to the best of my abilities. Also, if you have any requests for future thematic list builds, definitely leave a comment under this video. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.